Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman and the team from Paris Développement, thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you some of my insights and experience, both on agency and working within companies looking to launch and develop themselves here in France. Thank you also for the very good pronunciation of my last name, which is an obvious one. Just a little bit about myself. I'll try and respect as much as possible the timekeeping. Basically what I do is help companies here in France, but also internationally, to develop their businesses and make decisions at key stages of their development, launching products or brands. So that might be going from market research through to the planning process, through to implementation in the market. So I work independently. My company is VKI&CO, but I work with a team of specialists in a number of different fields, and I have partner agencies working here in France, also in the UK and in New York. My experience is predominantly in the hospitality and travel industry. I've worked here in France and other markets such as in Asia and North America. As you can probably tell from my accent, I am not French. I'm Canadian and British, so I have two nationalities and I speak several languages. And I've, over the last couple of years, had experience in launching products for a number of global companies, but also startups and smaller businesses. Intercontinental Hotels Group, I was marketing director for 5 years and launched a number of initiatives here in France, which I'll be able to share with you in a couple of moments. So I have experience also in other sectors, healthcare and technology, and I think there's quite a wide panel of representation here today of different industries, which is very interesting. So I'll try and give you some insights and some tips that hopefully will be helpful for you, because I think that's why we're here today. It's an opportunity to find out how can you put all the chances on your side to develop your business here in France. And as some marketeers or specialists in the field will say, well, it's quite easy, you know, you just have to target the right people at the right time, the right place, and there you go. Well, it's not easy if you don't know the market, if you don't understand the language, and French is French, and it's not Belgian French, and it's not Quebecois, and there are specificities that we need to understand. And if once you've understood those, then you're putting all the, at least good part of the chances on your side. If there's one key message that I'd like to share with you is don't assume anything. All too often I've seen companies that come into a local market and they may be part of a larger global organization and think they have the right formula because it's a success story elsewhere, but you need to take into account local specificities, and I really want to underline that. And I think that you know, we have an economic global situation, but cutting back on communications and marketing is probably, this is the one time where really it's not a question of cutting back, it's understanding where to invest and where to focus your investment and to get the best return on your investment in communication. So assume nothing means really getting under the skin of understanding the workings of a market. Like Fabrice was talking about how journalists work here in France, but also what are consumers and businesses using in terms of media. So I wanted to share a little bit about, we're obviously not going to have time to go through all the details of France, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of insight of what's going on here in the market. Digital media, it's on the radar for everybody, so I thought it was opportune that we would talk about digital from the outset. Digital media is increasing in France like many other markets, but there are a few particularities that are worth noting. 48 million users online. This is based on 2012 results, so we're obviously continuing to grow in that area. And it's worth noting that France is actually one of the biggest markets in Europe after Germany and Russia in terms of online users. So they are online and they are spending considerable amounts of time on internet. They're actually spending above the average, European average. Mobile is indispensable. Mobile is growing. French consumers are using mobile to view information, videos, and purchasing what we call now M-Mobile. So to add another bit of jargon to our everyday vocabulary, M-commerce. So we've seen an increase of more than 100% in viewing of videos on smartphones year on year. That's not to say, however, that traditional media should be put completely aside. And that's probably one of the underlining particularities, I would say, of the French market, is that you need to find the right balance between digital media and traditional media. Now, when I say traditional, I mean what we might call below the line or direct marketing, events. And so that's what ATL is above the line and BTL is below the line. And this is just to give you an idea. These are statistics of spend by companies according to their industry. So there are some variances between retail, consumer goods, services, and B2B, but we can see a general pattern that there is a balance that needs to be found. And so multi-channel marketing and communications is key. Particularly in the French market. And I wanted to point out how did we get to that, or what's behind this marketing mix. There are a couple of fundamental things, but I'd probably say the last sentence is the most important, is to gain consumer trust, French consumer trust. Once you've obtained that trust from consumers, or it may be stakeholders, or it may be, if you're in business to business, gaining their trust, then you really have a lot of opportunities in front of you to develop partnerships and business here in France. French prefer locally made products. That is a particularity as well. If you compare with Great Britain, for example, one of the recent studies by Ipsos showed that in Britain it would be 25% range that people would say that they would prefer locally made products. Building trust through word of mouth is essential. Consumers, they value what their neighbors say, what's being said on social media as well, and what is being recommended. The last point I wanted to make is that Paris is not France. It may seem obvious, but I think it's worth underlining again. There are different regions and different specificities, key cities like Lyon, Marseille, and they do have their particularities in terms of way of working and also their references. So as you get closer to those regions, if you are capable to get close to people in those regions and do business with them and communicate with them, you're building trust. So I would say the second point is really about communicating to engage in a dialogue. French people like to talk, and they like to have conversations. So as brands and companies, let's have conversations with consumers and your partner companies in the market. Just a couple of examples here about multi-channel marketing. When I was marketing director for Intercontinental Hotels Group with the brand which you may know, Holiday Inn, we went through the relaunch of Holiday Inn, which was a global endeavor and one of the biggest in the hospitality industry, hotel industry. So we, here in France, were looking to approach the French market and consider, okay, this is a global brand, we need to build awareness. How are we going to develop awareness about these changes that are going on with Holiday Inn? Holiday Inn did a whole makeover of their hotels, refreshing their services and the inside of their properties, as well as the external side of the property. So the objective was really to make this an opportunity to communicate to consumers on a local basis. So there was the traditional communication, if you like, outdoor communication in key destinations, airports, train stations in different parts of France, Lyon, Nice, where there's a very big airport there. It's the biggest and second largest airport in France, if I'm not mistaken. So we used traditional outdoor media, but we also used other media to have a multi-channel approach that was really specific to the French market, bearing in mind some of the things that I've just spoken about when it comes to media and so on. So we extended, for example, the loyalty program, which was, as a case in point, Business Club, which is a program for bookers, bookers who are reserving meetings and conferences in the hotels. And we wanted, this was an online program, and bearing in mind the media use and the habits of these consumers, we extended it to have a completely locally adapted, local content, regional content, web TV. And we also developed a partnership with a local personality, TV personality, who was specialized in makeovers, to go along the lines of the theme of brand renewing, remaking itself, to touch really the heart of the message that we wanted to convey. This is just a little film to show some of the events that we organized. So we did a road show in different regions, going to the areas where the businesses were that were booking our hotels, for them to really taste the, are we going to show the show reel? Sorry. Just talk you through it. This is one of the events in Paris, in one of the key hotels that were one of the initial hotels that was launched in holiday relaunch, Look and Feel. And so we did a competition. We invited key bookers to unite, to meet each other, because they had given feedback that they really wanted to meet each other, meet the personnel from the hotel company, and actually be close to the product. And that's another specificity, I would say, of the French market, is that don't be afraid to test your product sampling, because that's probably one of it's a key lever for them to really appreciate, understand what your product is about. So the objectives, they were achieved. We had a very good feedback. The participants were very satisfied, and they were in demand of more events of this type. And we generated an increase of more than 30% on the website. And it resulted also in more sales. So all around, it was a successful initiative, and we also managed to capitalize on it through PR, because of personality, the brand, the event, and so feeding to the press and journalists something that they could talk about. I think we can stop the film. And the other example that I wanted to share with you, if we can just go to the next slide, which is, sorry. Just thought I'd share a last example with you, which is a recent project with a company called Stelvin. Stelvin is specialized in aluminum screw caps for wine. So you can imagine, I don't think I need to say much more, given a French market where tradition is focused on the cork and the ritual of opening a wine bottle. And so the challenge was to be able to communicate and convey what the benefits were of having an aluminum opening. This was actually a first in a series of films that we're developing. It's content initially used for in business to business to approach hotels, restaurants, distributors, and now it's going to be continued on to consumer communication and content because of the positive feedback. And well, I don't need to go into the I think it speaks for itself. Relevant content, use of video, very important, and touching the hearts of really what, you know, preoccupies or may be traditional values of French. If it's presented in an interesting way, it can have an impact. Just to finish up, so top 10 tips, we're there. So when you assume nothing, do your research, okay? Plan ahead. There's nothing like planning ahead, even if at one stage or another you're going to have to launch your product or your company. But know the local competition, get local advice about different laws and legislation, taking into account the fact that France is vast. It has its regional specificities. One of the specificity I didn't mention was, you know, yes, August is a time where a lot of people, it's the majority of holiday makers are on holiday at that time. It means suppliers are not available quite often. Press as well are doing issues, back-to-back issues, or stopping issues and starting in September time. So that's something that you, and the zones, there are different zones between the north and south and the east. For holidays. So it's something to keep in mind, but you can also capitalize on it and use it as an opportunity to communicate. When we talk about la grande rentrée, a lot of brands capitalize on that. Adaptation, not translation. Don't be afraid to take some creative liberty to convey the message that you have to convey. You know, think about what it is, the message that you want to get across, and rather than just simple translation. And finally, multi-channel integration of your communication, bearing in mind that you have maybe salespeople, people in the field that can work with you. And finally, of course, I wouldn't be able to finish without saying use your local experts and develop partnerships. So.
That's you.
Well, more or less. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. IVANYI, for this very interesting presentation with 10 commandments at the end on a proper communication.